All right. And hello, everybody. So I know it's been a little bit of time since the last time we chatted, but today there is a lot of news to go over. So I'm super excited to talk about this. Now, before we actually get into it, let me introduce ourselves. So I'm Mark, an ex software engineer who is now just kind of vagabonding around and currently spending some time in my parents' basement at the moment. So I am definitely the guy you want to listen to right now. And I've just been traveling. You can maybe follow me on YouTube, but I used to do a lot of software development at Amazon. Now I'm working on some stuff which I do not want to talk about. Now, Shashank is the actual real AI expert here. He is currently working on at Google at a project called Stitch, which is awesome, and it will help you design your next website. So if you're interested in it, highly recommend you check it out. But he is the true AI wizard here. And every week or so, we decide that we will come together, meet, and chat about random AI topics. Hope you guys like it. We're on all your podcasts and we're also on YouTube. So if you're listening, that's fine. If you want to actually get involved in the conversation, come and watch on YouTube, and then there you can leave comments and stuff. And if you have any questions for the next episode, leave it in the comments, and we will be sure to put your comments in it. I've actually been thinking about maybe adding some like a listener comments section. So that would be cool. So if you have questions, we will try to answer them in the next one if you leave the comments on YouTube. So anyways, we got a decent amount of stuff to talk about. Shashank, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. A little bit sick and chewing a cough drop, so excuse the nasally voice and intermittent coughs. But, as always, this is an exciting week for AI. Lots of cool new announcements. I think some of the things that we want to chat about are the cool new AI first browsers that are coming out to maybe dethrone the Google Chrome. A lot of new data centers built by Zuck. A lot of new expensive hires by him as well, and new King of the Hill model from Grok. Let's start with Zuck. He's making a lot of waves. Recently, he posted on Threads, which is the Twitter/X competitor, which I don't really have the app installed, but I guess you can view it on the desktop without having it installed. He claims that he's building several multi-gigawatt clusters and is going to scale one of them called Hyperion. I think that's from a sci-fi book. I remember reading a book which had a massive tree, which is also a spaceship flying in the middle of space. I never finished it, but it's kind of reminiscent of that. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, Hyperion. That I think is the world's tallest tree, which is up in Northern California.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So
the tree
I
thing
think
checks out.
that the Hyperion tree is like they don't publish where it is, although I think that if you do a little bit of Googling, you could probably find it, but they don't want people to exactly know where the tree is because they're worried that, I mean, if you chop it down or you do some damage to it, well, then you just killed the tallest tree. So I think they want to kind of keep it safe. But I think there are some people that hike to it. Now, I would like to see the Hyperion tree. And I guess like it might be tough to tell exactly how tall the tree is, but yeah, it's a really, really tall tree in Northern California called Hyperion.
Yeah, similar to the tree. I think they showed an overlay of the Hyperion proposed data center, which is not available right now. It's something that will take several years, but they overlaid it on top of Manhattan and it covers the whole island. Massive, massive data center. And this is going to power their new super intelligence labs, which has a bunch of new hires. It's a new team focused on building AGI. I think.
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
it's really cool. Oh, I was just saying that, and it's gonna be. They want to make it 5 gigawatts, which is gigantic.
That's a
So,
lot.
that's about a little under 5 million homes. So that's like, I don't know. I mean, like, what is that? That's like almost the number of that's like almost like the power usage of Manhattan or something like that. So it's absolutely gigantic.
Yeah, for reference, we were Googling around what other data centers use, and some of the numbers that came up for the massive ones were 150 megawatts, which is Elon's Memphis data center, if I'm not mistaken. So this is an order of magnitude bigger. Instead of hundreds of megawatts, this is 5 gigawatts. Massive. Looking at the energy usage of San Francisco, some article in 2011 posted that SF uses roughly 18 gigawatts, which should be on the order of a small city. This single data centers
Yeah, I mean, so I guess if San Francisco is 18 gigawatts, then
in
this is
2011.
about a third of that.
Yeah.
So then, like, I mean, San Francisco, I wouldn't even call that a small city. I would call that a big city. So,
No, it's a pretty small city, square footage wise, to be fair.
I mean, in terms of like, if you think of the cities in the United States, it's definitely one of the bigger cities in the United States, right? I mean, like, I actually don't know the biggest cities, but I'm just thinking, like, San Francisco, San Jose, LA, Denver, Chicago, New York, be like Houston. I would guess that San Francisco might be like top 10 or at least top 20 cities. So I would call that a big city. I mean,
Yeah,
sure, it's no Tokyo, but I would call big. I'll call big city.
yeah, but either way, I think this is a lot of energy expenditure for training these models. And I was recently watching a video by let me pull her up. This is Karen Howe. She wrote a book about a lot of the challenges that society is facing because of AI. Everything from the environmental impact from these data centers to using these models to offload our thinking, and as a result, kind of getting dumber, to using it for hate speech, propaganda, lots of issues. But yeah, the one thing she did mention, which some of my non-tech friends also came up to me and asked me, was, these AI models, every time I use them, I'm like hurting the environment. Is that true? And it's, I guess it's in some way, any energy expenditure is coming in some fraction from non-renewable sources of energy, which creates carbon emissions, which pollutes the environment, which increases greenhouse gases, which might result in global warming. And just the scale at which we're doing it is insane. So I remember anecdotally the Memphis data center that Elon tried to spin up. He wants to move fast, and he couldn't get the energy supply for that data center in time. So he just spun up a bunch of generators using whatever non-renewable sources, natural gas, to power these generators. That was generating a lot of unclean fossil fuel byproducts. So I think to fuel this amount of energy, I don't know how they're going to do it, but given how fast these companies are moving and how they're skirting around rules and regulations, I wouldn't be surprised if they cut some corners and did something not as clean.
That's a really good point. I was actually wondering how they were going to get the power to do that too, because 6 gigawatts is huge, and this is going to be right next to Columbus, Ohio. So I'm actually in Ohio right now. I feel like maybe I should try to make a little trip and drive down to where this is, because now I'm sort of curious to know.
Yeah.
But it's just probably about 2 hours from where I am. So I'm in around Cleveland right now, and like Columbus is where they're building the data center. Columbus is about 2 hours from Cleveland, and Columbus is like a big-ish city, but it's not that big. It's an up-and-coming city, but like, I don't know how they're going to get all this power. But one thing I know is that in Ohio, there's like quite a bit of fracking. So if I had to guess, and I was a betting man, I would think that they're going to use a lot of fracked gas
Mm.
in order to power these data centers. Because I don't know how you could power that many data centers. Because the thing is Ohio, I don't think it would be great for wind or solar, just because like it's not that sunny here. There's like quite a bit of cloud coverage. So I mean, like, you probably get some, but for 6 gigawatts, I mean, 6 gigawatts, you would need a lot of solar panels. And for wind, it's just not. I mean, there's some wind and there are some windmills here, but it's not like hugely windy. And you wouldn't be able to use hydroelectric. There is a nuclear power plant in Ohio, but it's near the lake, so it'd be a couple hours away. So I don't think that you could necessarily get the nuclear power from the lake and like pump it all the way to Columbus. Maybe you could, but I feel like that would be far, especially if that much. So my guess is if they're going to do it, it's going to be maybe like gas.
There's another article that came out last week that said Elon's shipping a whole new data center from abroad to power one of his data centers.
What are the logistics of that? How does that work?
Just to visualize this, a power plant, in my mind, consists of these large furnaces that need to is the most visible thing when I think of a power plant that funnel probably the byproducts and water vapor of a lot of cooling for the water that's used to turn the turbines, but then all of the containment facilities to burn the fossil fuels and generate energy to then heat the water to turn the turbines. All of this whole thing, apparently he's just going to ship it from abroad to power his Memphis data center.
Wow.
I don't even know what that means.
Maybe you just ship a bunch of the different components and then put it in containers and just ship it in a container ship and then just reassemble it when it gets there. And then maybe you just like, because you can't be all at once. I'm imagining like IKEA for data centers in a certain sense, where you just have like each little part and you just assemble it all. I guess that's how else would you do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that draws into a question: what are we getting out of all of this energy and all of this resource that we're using? Most of the time, we default to ChatGPT now instead of using Google search, and that consumes an order of magnitude more energy. And we're paying for it. Everyone's paying a $20 a month subscription. I think a lot of people are. And we're doing a lot of unnecessary compute, I think, in the name of convenience, to offload work for our brains to do a lot of the manual thinking. I'm hoping we come up with more sustainable sources of energy to power all this usage.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do think that it's not necessarily the most efficient use of energy. And it's not also completely clear if scaling up these models is going to make significantly better returns. Because it does seem like that with the scaling laws, the more GPUs that you add, that the models tend to get better, right? But I think as we've seen in GPT 4.5, for example, I think it was OpenAI that used, what was it, like 4.5 used around like 10x the compute of GPT-4, if I'm not mistaken. But GPT 4.5 is definitely not 10 times better. So it does seem like you're getting diminishing returns. And I don't think that this is necessarily going to, I don't think that scaling is going to stop, but I think that eventually it's just going to become cost prohibitive to scale more. And then you're just going to have to do more algorithmic improvements. And I think that's actually kind of what DeepSeek showed, is that like, hey, you don't necessarily need to spend $50 billion or whatever it is on these data centers. And you can do this with algorithmic improvements and be a lot more scrappy. But I personally think that Mark Zuckerberg is doing this as almost like a recruiting tool to get people into Meta, because like he didn't give super solid timelines in the future as to when this is gonna be built. I think that like he probably intends to build it, but it's like I think with a lot of these infrastructure projects, they take a lot of time, and a lot of it is saying like, "Hey, look, Donald Trump, like we are putting manufacturing back into the United States. Like we're building stuff. Like look at that. We're gonna build this giant, biggest data center that anybody's ever seen." And then also you can go to your prospective employers, which your employees, which you are going and offering allegedly $100 million, which I don't think they're actually offering that much. But regardless, it seems like Mark Zuckerberg was offering his some of the people from OpenAI huge amounts of money in order to come to join Meta. And I think it's a really good sales pitch to say, like, if I'm Mark Zuckerberg, so let's say I'm Mark Zuckerberg and I'm trying to get you, Shashank, to work with me, right? So what I'd say, like, hey, Shashank, I know you're working at Google. You are going and changing the world, getting people to work on Stitch. You're revolutionizing how all this is working. I really want you to work with me at Meta. Not only will I give you $10 million, but I will also give you access to the world's largest data center. So compute will no longer be a bottleneck for you. You will have more GPUs than you can shake a stick at. Like, we will change the world. I'm going around and I'm making this offer to other people. So you're going to be working with the best and brightest people. I'm like the New York Yankees, where I'm going to be hiring, like, money is no object for me. Like, we are going to change the world, and you will have access to the most data, the best people, and unlimited compute. Come and join me. And I think that he's probably telling that to a lot of people, and a lot of people are joining. I mean, like, Shashank, when can you start?
I'm pretty happy at my team here in the Google labs working on really cutting edge stuff. But setting my work side aside, it seems like Zuckerberg has made a lot of impressive offers. Some of the rumors, like you mentioned, $100 million to poach some of the top talent. I don't know how much that's worth it in terms of return on investment, because I don't know what you're buying. You're buying, is someone worth like 100,000 times someone else? $100 million, maybe like 1,000 times someone else. That's tricky. But to name some of the people he's poached, this is from a Reuters article. The big acquisition is Alexander Wang. He, I guess the company was acquired for $14.5 billion for some kind of a controlling stake in Scale AI, and he brought Alexander Wang to head some division. They're still trying to figure out what's going on there. I had lunch at Meta to chat with one of the folks who does infra for web on the Meta AI project. And he did mention that Alexander Wang is heading a new division. Not sure exactly what they're doing. It's still very early. But that was an expensive offer. It's probably some fraction of the $14.5 billion that they invested, but either way you cut it, that's a lot of money for one single person. Some of the other people were Nat Friedman, former GitHub CEO. He'll co-lead the Wang unit to work on AI products and applied research. Former CEO of Safe Superintelligence, which was Ilya Sutskever's company, right? SSI.
Yeah, that's right.
And Ilya Sutskever, if you guys don't know, was one of the founders of OpenAI and one of the heads leading the company from way back when. Apple's foundation models head, bunch of researchers from OpenAI who developed the O series, who developed GPT-4o models, the GPT 4.5 models, a bunch of people from DeepMind. So a lot of very influential people who contributed a lot to the biggest foundation models out there across all the FANG companies. So it's a really impressive pedigree. I think you're right. All this money is being poured in to make a statement, to attract the world's best talent. Um, Same thing with the data centers. All of the investment is to show that we have the best infra. So come work with us. We have the best people building the best. Well, they don't have the best models yet.
They
That's one thing
definitely
they
do
can't say.
not have the best models at this point. But I think that I kind of I like the sports analogy
Mm,
where they are a team that just has a bunch of money and
mm,
they are willing to hire and spend as much money as possible to try to win this AI race. Because I think
mm.
in Mark Zuckerberg's mind, it's like if you don't win this or at least be competitive, like it could be winner take all, right? Like let's say there's a model that comes out tomorrow that is like way better than everybody else. Well, everybody might switch to that, and then everybody else might be left in the dust because I think that it's very possible that like if you're using one of these top end models, it might be able to help you build the next model, which might help you build the next model, and then like once you reach that lead, if it's sufficient enough, even if it's just like a couple percent more, you might be able to use that model to help you build the next model, and then it could just, um, you know, keep going until you're eventually just having something that beats all models, and everybody kind of migrates to that. And also, I think that like um, another sports analogy for this, right, is like let's talk about baseball, right? So it's like if you're batting 400 versus 350, right? Like batting 400 is only like you're not actually getting that many more hits than the person who's batting 350 or 300, right? Like if there's 10 at bats, like you might get like maybe, or if there's 100 at bats, right? Like you might be getting like an extra like 3, 4 hits or something like that, maybe 5 hits. But like you're getting paid way, way more. So I think that like the thing is I agree with you to say like, okay, one person isn't necessarily better than the next person. I think it honestly might be that they might be 5% better, 10% better than the next person, or know a little bit more about AI. But I think that like that's okay. And it's like, all right, you're paying a ton of money for that additional 10% of AI ability, but I think that might be just enough to get all those people in a room to make the next best model. And then maybe in, I don't know, let's say 6 months to 12 months from now, we might be saying, like, wow, like all those hires really paid off for Meta. And now they're crushing everybody. Like they poached from OpenAI, they poached from everybody, and they are now the top dog, and we can't beat them. And I think that so far, all of the meta models have been a little bit slightly worse than everybody else, right? Um, like they've been close, right? They've been really good models, but I don't think there's ever really been a time where the llama model has been the top of the leaderboards for really anything. I mean, it has been for the open source, but if you compare it to the proprietary models, I think it's always been just like a little bit worse. But who knows? I think in the future, 6 months, 12 months, Zuck is spending the money and they could be number one. I think I wouldn't count them out yet.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts about this. I like the baseball analogy because maybe you want to win the Super Bowl. Sorry, wait, that's football?
That's
What am I
football.
thinking?
Yeah.
The World
World
Cup,
Series.
World Series. That's right.
Yeah. Although the World Series is poorly named because it's only like in America, but I guess America is the world.
That's fine. We're very America centric in America here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think to win this one race, if that is indeed what like the outcome that we'll see, it might be worth it to pay an order of magnitude more for someone who's just like a little bit better, which is kind of the same thing we're doing with these models, spending an order of magnitude more to just get maybe single or double digit percentage points more improvement from these models. I think though, on the point of the meta models, the strategy they've had so far is to build open source models and give it out to the world for free. Um, I would guess this is something that a lot of interviewers asked Zuckerberg about his strategy to go open source and how long that'll last. And he wasn't very definitive about that approach because, like, it's only going to make sense until it makes sense. And now, given the amount of money that he's pouring in, and if you look at the trend in the industry, a lot of companies were publishing their research papers into journals and public repositories, but that has stopped. People or companies no longer want to share all of this valuable resource with the rest of the world because it's worth a lot and it maintains their competitive edge over all the other foundation models and frontier labs. So given this amount of investment, I don't think he's going to give it away for free. I would I'll be willing to bet that the next version of Llama 5, is not going to be open source, or at the very least, if it is open source, the main model, the consumer version, is going to be significantly different from whatever they release. So it might be like the base version for low powered devices, maybe like the quantized version, but the full model that's instruct tuned, which can actually respond to question and with a meaningful answer, and is of a reasonable size, has tool calling, agentic queues, all of that is going to be behind some guardrails, maybe behind a paywall or behind the metaverse.
Huh. That would be interesting if he started charging for that, because Facebook doesn't really charge for much of anything at this point. I mean, almost everything they do is free. I mean, sure, they charge for the Oculus Quest, I think, but I don't even know if they're making a bunch of money on that. I mean, for all we know, that could be a loss leader because it's pretty reasonably priced headset. And I also wonder if people would feel comfortable paying for Meta's model if it wasn't open source, because I don't think that Meta has a lot of good will, and I think in general it has a kind of like a negative reputation for a lot of people, and I think that many people would be hesitant to give Meta the information. But now it's not. But on the other hand, you could say Meta also has like 3 billion users, so it seems like plenty of people are okay giving their information. But I think that, like, the moment you have to pay, people might think, second guess themselves and be like, hey, do I really want to put all this, do I really want to give my information to Meta and also pay them for the opportunity to do it? I don't know. Like, I think if they're good enough, then people will. But it's also not clear to me if they will make that as a paid offering. But we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't bet against them just yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other companies that do that. The obvious one is XAI with X. Although, are they together now officially? I think they merged together, right?
I don't know if they merged. They may have. Let's check that.
But either way, it's under the Elon umbrella of companies. It merged in March.
Oh yeah, so I guess XAI now acquired X.
Mm-hmm.
So now there is no X company. It's just XAI.
Yeah, it might be like a tax loss harvesting strategy for billionaire to combine things and write off tens of billions of dollars. But either way, that's a company or a product that consumes all this free user information, charges people for that blue check mark, and now charges people for the XAI product. And similarly, I mean, Google does the same thing. If you think about even the frontier labs, we're paying to use the best models of OpenAI, Anthropic. We're giving it our personal information. And like we're paying them, and we're very happy with it. These models are amazing. They provide a lot of value, and they keep getting better. But one thing I want to mention briefly before moving on to these amazing big models is um, that a lot of companies, especially the FANG companies, have had a history of subsidizing products, the loss leaders, with their cash cows, the Google search or the Instagram, Facebook ad revenue, or whatever else. And I think Meta is kind of doing that with these massive offers, with these massive data centers. It is subsidizing the cost of the AI with all of these revenue generators, Instagram, Facebook ads, etc. And I think that's paying off because Facebook doesn't really, or Meta doesn't have too many wild bets, apart from AR/VR, which it has slowly started reining in the expenditure in that division. Um, and I think that might pay off. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely a thing that a lot of companies do. I kind of envision it like a baby. All right, let me explain the analogy real quick. So, you know, like how when a child is born, right? Like the parents will spend a bunch of time and money and resources just taking care of this child. You know, you take it to school. It's really like 18 years, kind of a minimum, to realistically probably 22, 23 years of just like investment onto this kid, maybe longer, until it starts paying like dividends. And I know you can't necessarily look at like a child as like financial dividends, but like if you were looking at it from like a cold, hard economic reality, it's like you're putting in like potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on a kid that will only then start making money later, like 25 years later, maybe. And then like you may never actually get paid back. And I sort of think about these companies that are having these loss leaders as treating these like loss leaders as kind of like a child, where you put resources, money, experience, time into these products until they grow enough where they eventually are able to go and go out, move to the big city, and get it on their own, metaphorically speaking. And I think that is, in a certain way, how Zuck treats like both his metaverse play and how he treats his AI as a small child that will eventually go out into the world later, maybe in 5 years. But right now, it's just maybe in high school, middle school, who knows exactly, and later going off to college, and then finally it'll be getting its job in the big city and making money, and it will then, when Facebook is old and gray, it will start taking care of it and, you know, washing its feet and paying for its bills and buying its groceries in the future.
If that analogy is accurate, then I think AI is definitely Meta's or Zuckerberg's favorite child. He's preferring that over all his other children and investing a lot of resources into it. I think that's kind of similar to Elon. Initially, I think he mentioned this in some of his interviews where, excuse me, he had some apprehension with AI. He initially wanted to put the brakes on OpenAI, and all the frontier labs, putting in a lot of money to train bigger and bigger models, releasing them to the public. And he was like, we need to think about the impact, because he was very existentialist about the impact of AI in like the doomsday scenario. He really believes that we might have a world-ending outcome where there's like the Terminator outcome, which you finally watched, robots taking over the world, or some kind of an apocalypse that we can't control because of the accelerating growth of technology. And he really wants to get us to Mars as a backup plan. And he's been since then changed his strategy to embrace AI, and he can't stop the progress. The genie's out of the bottle. Companies, labs, even individuals and entities are building models at a faster and faster pace, pouring more and more money, both in terms of data centers, with research, products, everything. So he's since adopted, a similar strategy, building bigger and bigger data centers, importing a whole power plant to power some of the new data centers in Memphis, and using generators to keep it running before the actual power plants are up and running, and building bigger and bigger models. Speaking of, the new Grok 4 model dropped a couple of days ago, and it is the new state of the art. It is the best at a lot of benchmarks. And one thing that was, I thought it was kind of really cool and gave me shivers, was that it got a perfect score on the AI ME 25 benchmark, which is like a high school math exam. This was the first, popular benchmark that one of these models aced, and it kind of shows that eventually we might have other benchmarks that no longer pose a challenge to any of these models, and they might just, surpass our ability to rank them, evaluate them. And at that point, like, how do we even, track how capable these models are, and how do we develop the vocabulary to understand what they can do and what we can use them for? But anyway, yeah, what are your thoughts on Grok?
Oh man, I love Grok. Grok is my new favorite model. So I've been paying for pretty much all of the LLMs at this point. Well, not all of them, but I pay for ChatGPT, I pay for Claude, and I pay for Grok. And I also have been using the Gemini model. So basically, I'm paying for all of the top end models. And for sure, I would say that Grok is my favorite. Now, Grok is also one of the most expensive, but I think it's actually truly worth it. So for my use case, I've been doing a lot of programming, and I find that whenever I use Claude, which I think probably is maybe the second best model, whenever I use Claude Opus, um, Claude tends to not think enough about the responses, I think. And Grok is a thinking model, and it is significantly slower to respond than most models. I would say it takes around the same amount of time as the O3 model from OpenAI, but it seems like Grok tends to listen to what I say more closely. So, for example, oftentimes what I'll do is when I'm writing code, I'll say like, "Hey Grok, can you help me figure out this bug?" And then also write a test to fix the bug, and also maybe update the documentation to explain what was done. And it'll do it. It'll fix the bug, write the tests, do the documentation, and I can keep um, asking a few follow-up questions. However, it seems like with O3 and Claude just gives me an answer really quickly, but it doesn't think as hard, and often will only do like one of the couple of things that I ask it. So it seems like Claude to me like will write decent code, but oftentimes it'll write code in unrelated files, and it won't like my architecture. So it'll just try to change a few things and then break some things in the process, and then it won't necessarily write all the tests, or sometimes the right tests, the tests will be broken. And O3, I think, does a better job at that. But it won't always actually do all the things that I ask it to. O3 just tries to be a little bit too terse in its responses. I think maybe they're trying to save money at OpenAI, but Grok just does exactly what I ask it to, and it works pretty well. Now, it's definitely slow, but I absolutely love it. I cannot say enough good things about Grok right now, but it is by far right now my favorite model, and I've used like pretty much all the models. and all the big ones, and I just like it so much that I'm happy to give my $30 a month to use it.
Yeah, I've heard rave reviews as well, similar to yours. I don't currently pay for it, but honestly, after your review, I might give up my ChatGPT subscription and subscribe to Grok instead. Because each one of these models provides something unique. So ChatGPT had the GPT-4o image generation, which was unparalleled until Google's Imagen 4 came out, or Imagine 4. And so I have that in Gemini. The VO subscription, similarly, it's way better than Sora, or it's pretty good. And so I don't feel like I need the OpenAI subscription anymore. I used to use Claude for a lot of coding stuff, but given that Grok might be better at it, I feel like it might be a good time to switch. The one thing I don't like is the fact that you mentioned it is a slow model. So it seems like there is no, I don't know how to put it, like a non-reasoning interface for Grok. It's always reasoning. It's always doing that extended thinking, and takes a while to respond. Is there a but? I guess you can use the slower Grok 3 model, or like the faster, less efficient Grok 3 model.
Yeah, you can use Grok 3, and Grok 3 is pretty good. But I think that the speed of thinking seems to be, and I don't know, I haven't like actually had enough time to play with it, but it seems like it is related to how difficult of a question you ask. So if you're asking something pretty simple, it won't think for very long. If you ask for something complex, it will think for a while. And actually, one more thing about what I like about Grok over Anthropic's Claude model is, so Anthropic, they have their Claude 3, or the Opus model, right? Which is their top of the line model. And it seems like with the $20 a month plan, I can ask it like one or two questions before I'm rate limited. Now, sure, I could upgrade to the $200 a month one, but I don't want to upgrade to the $200 a month plan. And with Grok's $30 a month plan, I can access, I don't know, I haven't actually ran into any limits yet with Grok 4. So I'm not using the Grok 4 heavy, which I guess would be even better, but like I am very, very happy with the Grok 4. And honestly, even Grok 3 is pretty good. And I have not run into any limits whatsoever. And even with O3 on the UI with ChatGPT, I have run into limits. Now, not like rate limits, but I've been getting limited on the query size that I can ask. So when I put in, I'm putting in somewhat long prompts. Now, when I say long, I mean probably around like 20, 30,000 tokens. And Grok will handle that no problem. Claude will accept it, but I think the answer is worse just because it does less reasoning. And O3 seems to not take the longer token inputs, and it just doesn't even try. It just gives up immediately. And Grok to me feels like that sweet spot of like, it feels like I'm getting the $200 worth of value, or even actually even more than $200 worth of value that I would have had to pay for Anthropic, because I think it's actually better responses than what I'm getting from Opus, and it's only $30. So I think that's amazing.
Have you tried using any of their APIs to just use the extended thinking features? Because I was listening to a podcast from Anthropic about how they structured the pricing model for the Claude Code features, and they were like, they didn't want to set up pay-as-you-go pricing, because then people have a lot of mental load thinking, okay, should I use this, call this API for this task? Maybe I can like reduce the scope and do some manual, cleaning of the data. they wanted to bundle it into their premium plan, the $200 a month or whatever, so that people wouldn't have to do that mental effort and would just use it more. And that's their ultimate goal, for people to use it more, to get more feedback, to then improve the model, and get more revenue out of it. Um,
Yeah, so I actually have used the API through Kaggy, which I think I mentioned a few times, but Kaggy is an alternative to Google. Um, and they have their Kaggy Assistant, which is basically allowing you to talk with a bunch of the top LLMs. So they have Grok, they have Anthropic's models, they have OpenAI, they have Amazon stuff, they have Mistral, they have Google, they have all the models that you want to use. And then basically it's just a wrapper around the API that also has some agentic capability that's built into the Kaggy search. So I was using that for a long time. And it was really good when I was using it lightly. And I actually would highly recommend it if you're just making a few queries here and there. But once I started using more requests, I started getting rate limit on Kaggy, because I think the Kaggy Assistant is $25 a month. And then once you use $25 in API credits, you have to renew your subscription. So I was going through the $25 a month Kaggy Assistant every couple days when I was doing some heavy coding. So I think I renewed like 4 or 5 times, and after like $100 something, I was like, all right, this is a lot of money. I'm just going to start subscribing to each of the LLMs individually, and I just downgraded the Kaggy plan to their unlimited search plan, so I can still use it as a Google alternative, but not use the LLMs. And then I can just go and use the LLMs directly. And then I think that using the LLMs directly on their own website is a little bit better, because then you have the whole UI specifically geared towards that LLM, and it's not like a wrapper. And you could have things like the Claude artifacts, or its own web search, or whatever, right? It seems just like a little bit better than having a wrapper. And at the time it was really good, but it's just, I don't know. I think that I understand what Claude is trying to do, where they're trying to get people to upgrade to the $200 a month plan. But to me, I don't think it's worth it, just because the $30 a month Grok plan, I haven't run into any limits whatsoever. Whereas with Claude, I was running into so many limits, I just felt like it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I think it is the frontier model right now. It is the best in a lot of different benchmarks. But it's not all perfect. I think there's a lot of challenges. There are some controversial responses that it's been giving. Claiming that Mecha Hitler is our savior, looking to Elon for any kind of input on opinion-based questions. It has tool calling, which can search X for tweets. And if you look at the system prompt, that's pretty high up with the beginning of the system prompt. And there's no differentiation. So I mentioned I used ChatGPT for the image generation way back when, Sora a little bit. Now Google has that feature, and I use that both for image and video generation. Claude for Claude Code. Now OpenAI also has that. But Grok has heavily invested, reportedly like 10x in terms of compute and RL, to get the best performing model. But as a product, I guess they don't have many multimodal capabilities. But now that I'm thinking through this, the one competitive advantage is the fact that they can access X natively. And maybe that's enough of a differentiator.
Yeah, that's a good point. For the multimodal capabilities, I have not actively been using that much. They do generate
Or
images.
anything else. if you think about any other kind of differentiator, multimodal, using computer use, coding ability, agentic ability, tool use, apart from access to X/Twitter, I can't think of a good differentiator.
I agree with you. I think that it's the best model, and for my use case, it works really, really well. But I think that's true. I think that when it comes to integrations with other services, maybe ChatGPT would be the best in terms of integrations. Anthropic, I don't know. At this point, since they used to be the best model, but it seems like they're not anymore, I can't really think of too many differentiating factors. So I feel like if you are a person that is looking to say what model to use, I think your two options right now, in my opinion, are either use Grok or use OpenAI. You could maybe argue use the Google models just because Google is cheaper, and also it has probably the best integration with things like YouTube and your Google Docs. So if you're like a heavy Google user, you're probably already using the Gemini models. If you want to integrate with everything else and you're not doing anything too hardcore, I'd probably choose OpenAI. And if you just want the best model and you are not worried about the integrations, but you're just pasting in whatever information that you need, I would probably go with Grok. I don't know. What do you think of that assessment?
I think that's a good assessment, but with that logic, you would keep switching the model that you use every whenever a new frontier model is released. And I assume you don't pay for the yearly subscription for Grok.
No, I pay monthly, and I definitely will switch to whatever is best. Like, I am very fair weather. Like, I have no loyalty to any of these companies. For a long time, I was using Anthropic because I thought that was the best model, and then I was using OpenAI because that was the best model, and now I'm using Grok because I think that's the best model now. But if Sam Altman comes out tomorrow, or if Mark Zuckerberg comes out in 6 months from now and says like, "Hey, look, Llama 6 is out and it's way better," I'll definitely switch to that because that may be the best model at that point. And I don't care. I'll just use whatever I think is best.
Speaking of best models, I wanted to share the ARC AGI leaderboard and take a look at what it means to be the best model. So for our audio listeners, I'm sharing my screen, which shows the leaderboard for the ARC AGI benchmark, which is the ARC prize, which is a test to run these models against something that would be easy for humans to solve, but is relatively hard for LLMs to comprehend. And a lot of this results in or involves multimodal capabilities with visual IQ tasks. So think looking at a shape and asking you to predict what the next sequence in these shapes would look like. But the goal of this foundation was to keep creating benchmarks that humans can solve that LLMs cannot. And if there's a model that can pass this benchmark, they'll probably come up with another one until there isn't a benchmark that they can create. And their definition of AGI was that the point where there is no more benchmarks they can create that a human can solve that an LLM cannot, and then that LLM would be as smart as a human. But looking at this benchmark, we can see that Grok 4 is pretty high. Not the highest though. I see O3 preview also a little higher than Grok 4. But in terms of cost, it is like way more expensive, like 2 orders of magnitude more expensive. Where Grok 4 thinking costs about $1 a task. O3 preview costs $200 a task. And for reference, the average Amazon Mechanical Turker, which is some contractor randomly chosen in the world to solve a pretty basic task, costs about $3. And the ARC AGI selected human panel costs about $17 a task, and close to perfectly solve this test. And Grok 4 is at about 66%. And if we rewind just a few, was it months ago, we had Claude, maybe GPT 4.5 or what? Grok 3. Okay, Grok 3 is a good one. That passed 5.5% of the tests, and Grok 4 is up to 66%. That's an insane jump in just a few months, right?
That is a huge jump. And yeah, the ARC company is definitely making some more benchmarks. I just watched a video by Francois Chalet, who is the guy who created the ARC prize, and he was talking about how I think they're making now the ARC 3, and I think they're maybe even working on ARC 4, where each of them are just more and more challenging. And his thesis was that thinking models and LLMs will be probably part of the solution, but he personally thinks that there needs to be some sort of algorithmic improvement in order to fully beat humans. So I think kind of what I got from his talk was like, we're just not there yet. Because if you think about it, right? Like after you build a lot of these models, once the model is built, until you build the next one, it's not necessarily going to get any better at solving a given task, right? So, I mean, sure, you might say like, hey, like you can like tweak your prompts and your prompts can be a little bit better, and then you can use the better prompts to maybe get a better response. But it's like if you're trying to go and solve a particular task, and if the model can't do it, it will never like improve and get better and actually be able to eventually solve that task.
Maybe a small caveat here. I think some of these companies have been trying to do, I'm not sure what the word is, but like online learning, where they try to train the model in real time during the test as they're seeing new examples. Try to, generate a bunch of different variants, pick the best one, and then incorporate that as training data into the model itself and keep improving. So as it is seeing a new domain of problems, it might fail the first few, but then it learns and then gets better.
So my mental model is this, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but my like rough understanding is that if I have a really big model, right? Let's say I'm training, Grok 4 or GPT 5 or whatever it is, and let's say it's on the order of magnitude of maybe around 1 trillion parameters. And if I'm trying to learn a new skill, then it would be pretty challenging for me to update all the weights in a model to learn that new skill. So let's say like I'm trying to metaphorically teach the model to ride a bike. Now, I know you probably wouldn't actually be able to teach it to ride a bike, but like a human, right, can like a human child can learn to ride a bike fairly quickly, right? It might be that they're able to ride the bike after maybe like an hour or so of dedicated practice that they'll be able to do it. And it just requires like a couple examples of, a little baby human needs one bike and one teacher. Whereas my understanding is with these large language models, if you wanted to teach it to ride the metaphorical bike, you might need to show it 1 million different people riding a bike. And then maybe then you'd be able to wiggle the weights enough throughout your billion parameters to actually make it where it could ride the bike. And because it's already such a big model, it's harder to make those changes. Whereas like with a human, even though the brain is already pretty big, it's able to adapt relatively quickly. And I don't see these models being able to adapt to like new unseen environments like nearly as quickly as a human would be able to adapt without just giving it tons and tons of examples.
That's fair. For reference, I don't work on ML in my day job, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I was paraphrasing one of the strategies that I heard that these companies could be employing. But again, we have no idea what these companies do. And I think your assessment is right. It would take a lot of training data to move the needle a little bit in terms of what these models can do, especially because these models are getting massive. Some of the numbers being thrown out for Grok 4 are 2.4 trillion. I think Claude 4 from Anthropic was close to 2 trillion. Before that, the biggest was OpenAI's, was I believe 1.8. All of these are rumored numbers, but these are massive, massive models, which take a lot of effort, money, compute to modify. But yeah, I think apart from doing language tasks, Q&A, logic puzzles, another aspect of being a human and working in the real world is doing tasks, the agentic capabilities. And one really easy way to compete with a human agent is by using the browser. And so we've been seeing a lot of rumors, actual products, and waitlists for prototypes for AI native browsers that integrate an LLM into your browser, allowing it to see everything that you're seeing with your local context, with all of your personal information, your email, your banking information, your local signed in portals, read, summarize, search the web for you, and in some cases take action, which is opening up this world of possibilities for agents to do work for you in your context as your co-pilot, which I think Bing was hoping, but I'm just so disappointed with Bing. I've just been like hoping and hoping, but like it never materialized. But now we have multiple companies, Perplexity, which released its first browser, Comet. I haven't tried it yet. It's available to their highest tier subscribers, about like $200 a month or something. Dia from the browser company, which makes a really beautiful, with beautiful UX browser. Previously, they made Arc, which was used by a lot of people here in Silicon Valley, a lot of my friends, but it kind of failed because it was too different from the regular browser. It looked beautiful, but it was just too many new things to learn. People don't care that much. They just want to do their task. They're busy. They have a million things to do. They're not going to spend a lot of time and effort to, pick up the Dvorak keyboard to change how they type. Similarly, they're not going to learn how to use a different browser. So they scrapped that project and try to build a whole new browser for a lot of reasons. They call it Dia. We just downloaded it. Mark and I both tried it. And it's cool, but still has a lot of room to grow. OpenAI is rumored to be working on a browser. Google also demoed some browser capabilities with Project Mariner. And I really think that this is the next frontier of products. We had vibe coding, which, it's still going strong, but AI integration in browsers, like strong AI integration that can both read, write, and take action on your behalf, is something that I'm excited about in the coming few months.
Yeah, I still haven't completely formed an opinion yet on what I think about these new browsers, because it seems like, so I can only speak for Dia at this point, but so Dia, the Arc browser company, they have this browser and it's a beautiful browser, right? So it seems like what they did is, from what I can tell, is they took Chrome or Chromium, I guess, tweaked the UI a little bit, made it look a little bit more modern, I guess you could say, It's got nice rounded corners, and it's a pretty beautiful UI. And then they just made a LLM that is kind of pinned to the side that you could just ask questions about the current tab. So it's almost exactly what the company like Retriever that we talked to. So if you guys want to listen to that one, they have a browser extension which can do something very similar. It's like an LLM that can go and then read what is on your screen and then have context around that and answer questions. And actually, Retriever can take actions. Dia cannot. So right now, I'm not seeing a huge benefit of using a new browser that you couldn't just get into an extension. Now, you could say that it's maybe a little bit better integrated, but I I don't see like a huge difference. I mean, it is nice because it does reduce the steps of having to copy and paste the data into an LLM, and it is nice that you could compare multiple tabs, which is cool. But I haven't figured out exactly the best way to use it, and I think I'm kind of open to suggestions at this point. If you guys are listening and you have like a cool use case that I should definitely try to use these browsers for, like I'm all ears. But like for my use case, I typically will just be pasting code or asking things into like Grok or one of the other LLMs, and I don't mind switching tabs and just typing into the different tab, and I haven't had to ask too much about what's on the screen. I think if it could take actions, that would be different. I think I could see myself using that more. But right now, um, I think I just don't know what I don't know, and I can't exactly figure out how to use this because it feels like it's really powerful and useful, but it just like doesn't seem that much different than just like moving things into the LLM itself or using one of the Chrome extensions.
I agree. I think the in terms of actual capabilities, the Chrome extension might do the exact same thing, but it's more of a product difference, like using a IDE extension to write code, um, as opposed to using a dedicated product like Cursor that has just deeper integration. I agree that today the use cases aren't there yet because the agentic capabilities are like still not mature enough. Like Grok 4 doesn't take action for you. It just ingests stuff and spits out more language. It doesn't work with a lot of tools to take a lot of complex action, as far as I know. Although they did mention they have some tool use. So maybe I'm not abreast of like all of the features of Grok 4. But so this is my bullish case for this sector. You remember Rabbit R1? I got that little device, I think like 2 years ago. And
Oh
the only
yeah,
reason
that thing is cool.
only reason I bought it is because like I thought it was fun. It was pretty affordable. It was really cheap, and it came with a year of Perplexity subscription for free, and that the cost was exactly the cost of Perplexity's yearly subscription. And I was like, this is fine. This is worth buying for like an early prototype gimmick, which which was supposedly building the first LAM. I think that's what they call it, large action model or large agentic model, which was supposed to take actions on your behalf. They were going to build this whole app store where you could go and browse a bunch of actions that it could do on your behalf, like, I don't know, like ordering things for a specific meal from Instacart and then shipping it to your house and like updating you with the status. So you would just say, hey, I want to cook there's chicken pot pie or something, and then it'll like order everything, place it in your cart, order it, ship it to your place, send you an update with the ETA. And I was like, this is kind of cool. that specific use case is very nuanced, but depending on what you're doing, especially for businesses, their employees probably do a lot of repetitive things day in and day out, use a bunch of tools, mostly on the web. And with a powerful enough agent that has access to the web, you could automate whole job functions. And we have a lot of different approaches to this. You can just plug in information into the chat interface itself. It can search the web for you, take actions for you. But then you run into like authentication issues. What if you wanted to access your Gmail account? Then you had Operator, which allow you to sign into different things into the browser. But then it's kind of separated from you. It's not running in your local environment, so you can't work with it. You had to hand it off. You had to hand off a separate dedicated task to Operator, which it would do completely in a cloud virtual environment, and then give you the results back. It wasn't as easy. It wasn't as fluid to just like pause, take over, and then continue the task from where the LLM left off, or vice versa. You're doing something, you're like, okay, I've gathered all the resources. Now, like, put it all together, convert this into a spreadsheet, and then email all the people in this list. You couldn't go back and forth and work with the LLM as a co-pilot, like this freaking co-pilot that Bing promised us a long time ago. So I'll give you a use case. My girlfriend was trying to consolidate a list of items that she had bought into like a spreadsheet for some kind of a customs import checklist that they needed. And it was a lot of items, a lot of tiny items that would be very tedious to go through, click on all of the names, the store, the quantity, the purchase price, the size, the color. And I used Retriever, the company that Mark just mentioned. So Retriever is a browser extension that has a lot of users right now, and they offer an integration into your existing browser, Chrome, and I think is what they support right now. But it can read and write. So it can read all your web pages. It has an LLM that maintains an internal state, and then it can write into Google Docs, into Google Sheets, and I believe even click on things in your browser window and post a tweet for you, for example. And I'm like, this is really cool. So if you take that a step further and you have a fully integrated browser that is just more native, the browser company, Dia, talked about inline browsing, where you kind of just talk to the LLM and it shows you little snippets of websites right in the chat box. And you can like click it, expand it into a full-fledged website, collapse it, and ask the LLM to take action on it. Right now, Dia can't take action, but that is the future that I envision. And it's really powerful and it can replace whole employees.
Yeah, that makes sense to me when you put it that way. I think I'm on board with the vision. I think that it makes sense to build it into the browser or even the computer operating system. Like I could see something like this being built into Android or being built into, Apple's
macOS
computers. Yeah, Mac OS, something like that, where you have action. And now I think that it may not be sufficient for these agents because my gut says that if you want to have a full deep integration with a particular service, clicking around, the ability to read the DOM and click around and take actions on the browser, it will be very, very powerful, but not sufficient to where we want to go. Because I would think that, for example, if you want to, let's say, make an integration with Google Sheets, I don't think that the Dia browser would have know everything there is to know about Google Sheets and be able to take all the actions on your spreadsheet. I think that the company that would best be able to make that type of agentic behavior integration with Google Sheets that can work really well with it would be Google. They're the ones who make Google Sheets. They know their product the best. They know what it's capable. They would be the ones to do this. But I think that this would probably get you like maybe 70 or 80% of the way there of what maybe Google could do. And I think Google probably do something that's far better. But also that would be kind of a custom solution. This would be a sort of generic solution that could maybe solve any problem like 70% as good as what a regular company could do. And probably for many use cases and scenarios, that's probably good enough. And probably over time, like maybe it'll be 50%, 60%, 70%. And then like eventually in like 10 years or something, it might be where you're at like 95% or 99% of what the company could do. And then people just use this, and it might take some time, but maybe we'll just be having the AIs do all our things, like, book our flights, reserve our meals, do our grocery shopping, figure out what products to buy, and cook our meals as well. Because, why not? And then we'll be in an age of abundance. But I think we're still a little ways away from that, because even if the AI is there, I think all the integrations won't be there yet. But we're getting close, and it's exciting.
Well, I think you echoed this premise that we're all on board with, that AI is just going to keep getting better, and eventually, there's only a certain number of doublings that we need until it reaches and or surpasses human intelligence. Looking at that ArcAGI benchmark is like a clear indication of the rapid progress we're making. So right now, I think all these companies are laying down the foundation. Like, the web is the portal to the world right now. Most of these models are trained on data from the internet, the web. Most apps have an application on the web. There's some, Uber, which, you have to download an app, or TikTok, for example. But like even them, you can browse TikTok on the web. I think Uber has a web portal. But anyway, web is one of the most ubiquitous services on there. And if you can control the web, you can do almost everything a human can. And we're just missing this action piece. We can ingest a lot of data and make sense of it, but the action piece is not quite there, but it is getting better. There's actually another pretty big announcement, Kinney K2, which was an open weight open source model released by Moonshot AI. It was released like a couple days ago, I believe. But this made a big splash because it approaches frontier model capability, competes with like Anthropic, and surpasses Anthropic's Claude for Opus in live code bench because of its agentic capabilities. It's able to act, call a bunch of tools, and take complex actions in a way that these LLMs currently are not that good at yet. And so if you extrapolate this out a few years in the future, I'm sure Google could do this too. Google might do a better job, like you mentioned, because it has access to Google Sheets and Google Docs, and we built it. And I would love for Google stock price to keep going up. It's fantastic for me. But I don't think it's about a specific company or product or tool. It's about being a general agent, which can solve any kind of tool, any kind of app, website. And I'm sure if you give the Google Sheets landing page, or like the app's screenshot to one of these LLMs, it can figure out what buttons to click to create a new entry, how to format, modify, look up the documentations for all the formulas, and it's just missing that last action piece.
I don't know if I would say it's just missing the last action piece, but yes, I think I would agree with you. And I actually haven't heard of this Kimmy. This is just kind of browsing around with it. It looks pretty neat. I'm gonna have to try it. Have you tried Kimmy yet?
No, I haven't. I am running an old M1 book. And we're just chatting about potentially upgrading to a nicer, beefier laptop that can run some of these models locally. But no, I haven't. It's just been making some buzz on the interwebs. Um, and I don't have a good use case for it. Um, I'm hoping one of these browser agents or extensions would use tools or models like these to incorporate its agentic capabilities to give us products rather than me having to re-engineer everything from the ground up.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. So one other thing that I think is really nice about these browsers, and I wouldn't say nice necessarily for the customer, but I would say nice for the companies that are building the browser, is I think that it is wonderful for the vertical integration. And I guess that's good for both the users and the companies, right? Because the problem is if you are building, let's say, an extension, or if you're building like a website and you don't own the entire stack, well, now you are kind of at the whim of whatever browser that you're running in, right? So Shashank, as a front end web developer, you have to spend a lot of time making sure that your code runs in all the different browsers, right? Like, if you want to support Internet Explorer 6, right? Like, some people still use that. I don't know why, but like, some people probably still use IE5, IE6. They're using some outdated version of Firefox, right? Like, but and you have to make sure that all of your code runs on all those browsers, right? And so in a certain sense, you have to write code for like the lowest common denominator browser. Or you could just say, like, we're not going to support those older ones, right? Now, Apple, on the other hand, they have to write code that runs on like 3 phones. And they just have to make sure that works really, really well on those phones. Whereas as a front-end developer, you have to write code that runs like good enough on thousands of different browsers and versions of those browsers. But if you are a company that has your own browser, you can make sure that your software runs really, really well on that browser and you have deep, deep integration with it. So in theory, you'll be able to have a better product than anybody else because you have that complete vertical integration of the browser and the things that are running within that browser. And for a fact that you say, like, hey, look, you use this browser, everything's going to be working really, really well. And then you're also not beholden to any other company, right? Like, you don't have to worry about, what changes is Google making to the browser, what changes are being done. Like, you can just make it so that like you kind of own your destiny as a company. And I think in terms of platform lock-in, it's really smart for these companies to have their own browser. Even if that not that many people use it, you could say, like, hey, look, you want the premium top of the line experience, use our browser because it's going to be amazing.
Well, I mean, kind of, yes. But most browsers today that are not Chrome are built on top of the foundation of Chrome, which is Chromium, the open source version of Chrome. All these browsers that we just mentioned, Comet from Perplexity, Dia from the browser company, are all based on Chromium. Because building the web is very complicated, and there's I don't know, the web is the biggest platform, way bigger than mobile, way bigger than desktop, way bigger than all the console games. And there's so many people who built the web for the most popular browser, which is Google Chrome. And so if you're making a new browser, it better be compatible with all the existing websites that are there that have built their websites to work with Google Chrome. And that's kind of what these browsers are doing. And hats off to Google for standardizing this open platform, open standard. And yes, I mean, there's like the web spec, which a lot of other companies try to follow. Mozilla, Firefox, and Safari try to support the same APIs, but like every implementation is different. As a web developer, like I pull my hair every time there's some minor nuance that one browser supports slightly differently that like breaks our product, and we gotta add workarounds or like reach out to Firefox. I have like a pending bug with Firefox to get them to look at an issue where they handle parsing of HTML clipboards if it's not just text, and if it's like actual XML content. They do some weird parsing. I don't know why. There's some random guy at Mozilla who implemented it that way because that engineer had one task on his plate and he had to get it done before some deadline, and he did it weird, and it's breaking our product. So he's looking into it. He admitted it's weird. They're doing some double parsing formatting, and he's like, okay, fine, we'll get to it. So these are all the quirks and nuances you have to deal with if you are building your own browser. But building off of Chromium is a solid approach, which is what most of these companies are doing. It's to use the analogy of vibe coding, because I think it's very similar. You can build your own extension to VS Code or any of the other IDEs like Android Studio, IntelliJ, etc., or you build your own browser. But that is a non-trivial task. I met one of the some of the people who are building Zed browser at the AI Engineer Conference like a month and a half ago, and it's a non-trivial task. They've been building this browser from the ground up for years. These are the people with a lot of experience, like a whole career of experience building browsers from the ground up, building applications that run as if they run natively on your desktop, but in a browser environment. They built the Atom note-taking editor, they built Electron, and now they're building Zed, which is an IDE, a code editor, from the ground up to be like, I don't know, 120 FPS, very performant, handles lots of tabs really well. I don't know why you would need 120 FPS in a code editor where you're typing characters, one character at a time, but they're doing it. And it's a lot of work. It's not that easy. I think Cursor and Windsurf both try to do it, and they're like, this is ridiculous. We can't do it. And they ended up forking VS Code, which is kind of the analogy to building a browser off of Chromium. You fork a popular standard thing out there, and then you kind of add your own distinguishing features on top of it to entice users into using your portal. And I'm sure there's going to be a new browser war happening in the next coming months, if it's not already happening. And hopefully we see something useful come out of it as end users.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and I'm ready for the future. But we have been talking for a while, so I think that we should probably wrap it up. I don't know, Shashank, is there any other closing remarks that you wanted to have? Anything we should tell the listeners about?
Oh, I talked your ear off for a while. I think I'm all done. This is a good chat. We covered a lot. And yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, one last thing, guys. If you're listening to this, leave a comment on YouTube if you have questions. We want to get to your questions. So I can almost guarantee you, if you are listening to this, we do not have enough listeners to not get to your questions. If you ask a question that's like coherent, we will answer it. So ask a question on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description. We will get to it. If there's 10 questions, we'll answer all 10. Like if you have a question, answer it, or we will answer it. Like I would be excited and to do some research and answer the question, I guess within reason. So ask whatever you want. Could even be personal about us. Happy to talk about it, again, within reason. So yeah, leave a comment, ask a question. We'll try to get it on the next episode. But after that, yeah, thanks for listening. We'll catch you in the next one.